This show is brought to you by Nice Mug. Nice Mug is the only mug made entirely out of ice. For more information, go to nicemug.com and enter the coupon code Sauna for 10% off your entire purchase.
Well, hey everybody, this is Glenn, and welcome to another episode of Sauna Talk. And I would like to welcome Vladimir von Tsurikov. He's the director of the Russian Museum of Art in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Vladimir has brought with him a passion for the advancement of Russian art and culture, and a strong record of international collaboration. Over the last 10 years, he co-organized and co-curated several exhibitions with Russian institutions in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Yekaterinburg. Vladimir has published numerous articles and presented dozens of lectures both in the U.S. and Russia. In addition to releasing 2 research volumes, he has edited 5 volumes of a scholarly series, quote, Readings in Russian Religious Culture, unquote. And he continues to serve on a number of editorial boards. Vladimir also serves on the boards of the Russian Historical Society in the U.S. and the Russian Nobility Association in America. Vladimir received his Ph.D. in Russian history from the Moscow Theological Academy in 2011 and an M.A. in Russian language and literature in the year 2000 from Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. Our interview took place in the sauna at the Hewing Hotel, downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Hewing Hotel's top floor setup features a brand new rooftop sauna, a very generously sized hot room space with transom windows overlooking the downtown skyline. We have easy access, just steps outside the hot room, to the outdoor rooftop patio, where there is also a hot tub and fresh air chill-out zone. The Hewing Hotel rooftop also offers separate men's and women's facilities, each equipped with showers, bathrooms, lockers. We also have a Nordic vibe spacious bar and patio area, offering signature drinks from local vendors including Tattersall Distilling, a micro distillery based down the elevator and a short bike ride away. John Peterson made this event happen. You may know of John as founder of the 612 Sauna Society, the first cooperatively owned sauna organization in the United States. John is also partner of Sauna Society Builders, which is the organization hired by the Hewing Hotel to host community and cultural gatherings. And this is what we did on a recent Friday night in Minneapolis. As others were swilling down their beer and cocktails at the neighboring bars and restaurants in Minneapolis, we were a group of folks enjoying a healthy sauna experience while learning more from Vladimir about the parallels of sauna, Finnish sauna, and Russian banya. In this episode of Sauna Talk, you will get an understanding of Vladimir von Tsurikov's deep love and appreciation of the banya experience. How banya is a social and community gathering place, as much as it is a wonderful wellness practice enjoyed by many ethnic communities in Russia and neighboring areas. This episode will be especially interesting for those of us who enjoy learning about the authentic sauna experience as it relates to its offshoots and parallels with other cultures, in this case, specifically the Russian banya. So, without further chatter, I am pleased to welcome Vladimir von Tsurikov to Sauna Talk. Well, yeah, this is... That's right. Well, welcome everybody to Sauna Talk. This is a very special episode. Typically, Sauna Talk happens on the sauna bench, and that's what we're doing right now. But untypically, this sauna is taking place in a public space. We're downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. We're at the Hewing Hotel on the rooftop. And can you guys see the skyline? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. There's plenty of room in this hot room. I mean, it's a massive hot room, and you're going to hear some people coming and going. And we're going to be doing an interview today, and I'd like to introduce...
Vladimir
And Vladimir, what's your last name?
von Tsurikov.
And that's not an American name, is it?
No, it's actually Russian with a little bit of German in there as well. But I'm third generation outside of Russia. My grandfather left with the White Army after the revolution, so ended up...
What year was that about?
1920. 1920, he left from Russia with the White Army and ended up in Czechoslovakia first and then in Germany.
Fantastic. Wow. And you were born in what year?
1970.
And born where?
Upstate New York, where my father was a visiting professor, and then when he returned to Germany, I was still less than a year old, so I grew up in Germany and then moved to the U.S. in '88.
Cool. Well, where in upstate New York?
Plattsburgh.
Okay. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. I don't know
Yes,
if you knew that.
it's
but
much
upstate.
warmer than here, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm turning you around just so you can face the audience. This is actually a really special podcast. We're joined on the bench with some other folks from Minneapolis here, and the purpose of this Sauna Talk is to open ourselves up to learn a little bit more about the Hewing Hotel and this wonderful sauna on the rooftop that is a great place to engage with others, whether they're hotel guests or, in this case, it's an extension of the 612 Sauna Society, where JP, who you'll meet on microphone in a little bit, will be joining us. And our main guest today, and you just heard the quick introduction with Vladimir. And so, Vladimir, how we heard about where you're born. You grew up in Germany for a good part of your life, and what brought you to Minnesota?
Well, in 2014, I came out here when I was offered the position of director and president of the Museum of Russian Art here, and I had been working for 15 years prior to that with Russian cultural collections and archival collections and curating exhibitions both in the U.S. and Russia, and had actually also collaborated with the museum here in South Minneapolis on their Romanov exhibition in 2013. So in 14 I came out here, and we've been doing a lot of fun things there, and anybody who's listening, I invite everybody to come. In fact, I brought guest passes for free admission to everybody who's here tonight, so don't leave without one, and we hope to see you there.
Fantastic. Any of you folks been to the Russian Museum in South Minneapolis? 50. What's the address on that?
It's on the corner of Stevens Avenue and 54th, so it's right off of 35W, the Diamond Lake Road exit. You can't miss it.
Very accessible, and you can almost see the downtown skyline. Do you get a lot of folks that fly in to come to Minneapolis for the museum specifically?
It really depends what's going on in terms of our programming. I mean, sometimes we have some really unique things, like last year we had a Fabergé exhibition that it was called Unknown Fabergé New Finds and Rediscoveries, and we represented 17 different collections, most of them not previously exhibited, from all over the U.S., both in private hands, which means sitting in bank vaults somewhere, or other museums, but which are not necessarily in the public eye, but also from as far away as London, from the from a jeweler, Warski's jeweler, and even from Helsinki, Finland, which is very fitting given the sauna, from the National Museum of Finland, and from several private collectors there as well. So that brought in people from all over the U.S. because people who collect Fabergé or are interested in that are really passionate about this, and they will very often go through any lengths to see something new, and it was a wonderful exhibition. So for that, people come from all over the place.
What is Fabergé?
Well, Fabergé is, alongside the name of the last Russian Tsars, the Romanovs, probably one of the most recognizable name that's being associated with pre-revolutionary Russia. It was a famous jeweler who became really famous by making Easter eggs for the imperial family. So each year a new imperial egg would be commissioned. But of course, in addition to all of these eggs, there are so many other things that Fabergé made, from everyday jewelry to dishes to samovars, and of course plenty of decorative items that are nowadays all over the world in museums and in private collections, but also in Russia, of course.
Well, I'm glad you explained that. I thought Fabergé was a kind of cologne, but I can stand corrected. And if you folks have any questions for Vladimir, just come on in and join up. I thought, being that we're sitting in a sauna, we could dive right into sauna and how sauna differs from the Russian banya, maybe the commonalities and also the differences. So let's just dive right into that. I mean, we can get back and speak a little bit more about your role at the Russian Museum in town, but I think it's quite exciting to hear your perspective of sauna versus banya, if you want to speak to that.
Well, the main thing is that a traditional Russian banya differs by the fact that it introduces, of course, steam, just as JP is doing here, and it's not a dry sauna. And also the temperature is different. But I found, actually, through 612 Sauna Society, that there are also a lot of similarities, or this kind of fusion that you see culturally in the sauna/banya world, because really a Russian sauna, a Russian banya, is not just a place where you can warm up. It's many things. I mean, it used to be a place where you bathe, so really important for hygiene. Then it really added the component of a social life and, in many ways, community building. Because a sauna is, as you know, we say in Russian, very democratic. That, I mean, nobody's wearing a tie, name tags, everybody's entirely equal the minute they walk into a sauna setting. So it's a wonderful place to meet people, to discuss all sorts of things, from current affairs to literature to politics to business very often. But it's really equalizing in how people socialize with each other. And I've had some of my best experiences in Russia actually happen in saunas. I remember.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask for an example, and here you go.
Well, my younger son, for example, as he was graduating high school and wondering what he should do next, should he apply to college, or I had offered him to go and study in Russia to improve his Russian, because even though he's fourth generation outside of Russia, but we speak Russian at home to kind of promote, your heritage in terms of language, culture, and so on. And I had offered him, to take kind of a year off before college and go to a Russian university and study. And for him, it was very difficult to understand, how would I do that? I mean, is there kind of a website where I go and that says, this is what you do if you want to, spend a year in Russia and study? I said, no, don't worry. So a couple of months later, I find myself in the Kaluga province in January, and it's about the temperature that is here right now, but much
Where
more
is
snow.
the Kaluga province?
It's not far from Moscow,
Okay.
and actually with some very well-known universities as well, and cultural sites. And I was in a Russian banya with some colleagues from that I interact with culturally, and they asked me, what are your kids doing? I said, well, I'd like to send one of them to Russia. So the conversation quickly went to, well, I went to grad school with the current rector of such and such university, which is one of the major ones in Moscow, and consequently my son went to this university for 2 semesters, and even as he arrived, he never had to do as much as fill out an application form.
And all of this connection happened in the banya.
Absolutely, it's all through the banya. And the interesting thing is, of course, that sometimes you may expect too much from the banya, because as I presented my son with this letter of acceptance, his question was, Dad, can you do this for me with the American university? I said, no way. Maybe here, I don't know. We have to see.
Yeah. Well, we're working on that kind of connectivity.
But of course, that's really kind of maybe an extreme anecdote, which happens to be true. But it really also speaks to how important the sauna is. But then, I don't know if any of you have seen Eastern Promises. If anybody is studying the meaning of Russian gangster tattoos, then Eastern Promises is a very good movie for that. It's also amazing to hear Viggo Mortensen, who does not speak Russian, but he does so in that movie and do so without an accent. So if you are a linguist, it's also fascinating.
And so he's a non-Russian, speaking Russian?
Yes, he plays the role of a Russian gangster in that movie.
And how is his Russian?
It's without an accent in that movie.
How does he do that? Is that why he gets paid the big money?
I think he has a very good linguist who trained him for that. But it was really a great example of the art of the tattoo in Russia and what it actually means, all of those different tattoos. And I remember being in a banya in Moscow that's called Sanduny, and I'm wearing this banya hat from there, which is a historic place that was built in 1808. And one of my brothers lives in Moscow, and we went there. And as we're getting undressed, Russian sauna typically involves no clothing, but it's different men's sauna from women's sauna usually. So we're dressing down, and I look at my brother and I say to him, "Okay, don't stare across. This guy has 2 stars on his shoulders." Of course, he stared right away. But so sometimes actually that's also very revealing, and it might inspire a little bit respect in that instance. But other than that, it's really a very important part of Russian society, and it's present in literature, it's present in the arts when it comes to paintings, and many people believe that it can cure everything. Another one of my friends who has been advised by his cardiologist and others numerous times to change certain aspects of his lifestyle, including visits to the sauna. I think he was at one point forbidden to attend a banya because of what it might do to him.
Was this cardiologist a Russian cardiologist or American?
It was a Russian, well-meaning cardiologist, but the example of how difficult it is for a Russian, I think, is well illustrated, because when he said to his doctor, "What do you mean I can't go to a banya? Never? What about a little bit?" And the doctor's prescription was, "Well, a little bit won't hurt."
That's good. Back to the difference between banya and sauna. As we know, sauna is more of the Finnish, a nod more to the Finnish style. I think that's what we think of as sauna in North America. We're in predominantly viewed as a sauna. Can you tell us about the physical differences of where we're sitting now, what we would call a sauna? Is it different than the Russian sauna? How about the physical makeup of banya versus sauna?
Well, the public banyas may have, for example, a higher ceiling, and a lot of attention is given to the actual source of the heat. And one person is usually assigned, is called the banshchik, to operate that. So making sure that there's enough moisture in the air constantly, making sure that moves entirely, and also circulates. Banshchik.
That's the equivalent of like the
Sauna. Yes, banshchik.
Banshchik.
Banshchik. He's the person in charge of making sure there's enough water on the stove. He's the one who will use the branches, the venyik, on people.
How do you say that?
Venyik, which is of course another thing, that the importance of the either oak or березовый venyik, or birch, and sometimes even cedar. To get cedar, yes, especially in a cold like that, it is, because the needles will really get your circulation going.
Have you folks raise your hands? Who's experienced the Venyik treatment? Yeah, a few of us. That's great. That's great, and very much in parallel to the Finnish, the Finnish sauna experience. They do the same thing. A lot of times it's in the spring with the freshly cut birch, new growth birch.
Absolutely.
Similar in Russia.
Yes, and also what's very important for many is to keep the water that you have in the bucket where the venik usually goes, because that's said to do wonders for your hair. People rinse them off with that. And there are different techniques, of course, for the venik. And I think mistakenly sometimes people believe you're only kind of hitting yourself with that. But that's only a real small part of it, because what you're doing is you're really trapping the heat between the branches and your body. Again, you're moving the air with that. You have all of the odors coming out of the leaves.
And the
which are
oil into
important.
the water that you referenced before. And in Russia, is it okay to pour to dump that water on the rocks?
Yes, very often that's being used, because that provides the fragrance that people are also looking for.
Just to interject, so just to catch you guys up, we're in downtown Minneapolis, Hewing Hotel on the rooftop. We're joined with a large collection of folks here in the hot room. Say hi to everybody. Any questions? I mean, this is great dialogue. If you have a question, raise your hand and you can come over to the mic. We're here with Vladimir, who now lives in Minneapolis. Russian, grew up in Germany, well familiar with the Russian tradition of banya. We're talking about how it relates to the Finnish sauna that we all know in this room a little bit more than the Russian style. But I'm going to pass the mic here, and JP's got a question.
Yeah, I don't want to start anything here, but I have a question. I've heard that the Russian word banya is actually older than the word sauna. Do you know anything about the history of the word, or just about like how old were the first references to banya? Were any historical information that might be interesting to our guests?
Well, I think that etymologically, I don't have the entire history to present, but it's related to other words that deal with bathing. I mean, obviously, Slavic language is part of the larger group of Indo-European languages. So,
Is that what it means? Bathing, banya?
banya is the actual noun that signifies the place, that describes the actual place, but the actual root has also different words that derive from it, or related words. Now, I don't know what how old the word sauna is. I'll be happy to claim that banya is the oldest such description, but I think
We want to create a ruckus.
Yeah,
Yes.
we gotta get some controversy on Glenn's Facebook page.
Banya is older than sauna.
You heard it
Well,
here.
given the unifying aspect of a banya or a sauna, I think that it's also important to remember the closeness of the Scandinavian countries and Russia. And at different times, whether it's the Swedes invading Russia or the Russians adding certain territories, of Scandinavia, Finland, and so there's a lot of interaction and intersection culturally. And that goes also for the banya culture. In many ways, it's extremely similar. And if you want to go back to the princes who ruled Russia at first, according to historical narrative and mythology, whether it's true or not, who knows, but it was actually Vengarians, so Viking princes who came from the north to rule the Slavic people, who were invited, actually. So there's a lot of intersection culturally, no doubt, and that intersection, I think, is also really probably to blame for the similarities that exist.
Right on. Introduce yourself.
My name's Steve Noonan.
And Steve, where are you from?
I'm from Orono, just west of Minneapolis.
Cool. West Minneapolis, for all of you listening in foreign lands. And what's your question?
What's the optimal temperature in a banya as opposed to a sauna? Are they the same? Is there any kind of recommended temperature?
And do they need to be warmer in Orono as opposed to Minneapolis?
I think the most important thing that I've learned from numerous banyas in Russia is that the best guidance is what you feel comfortable with. Because the most important goal is to have a good experience. And I learned this because with 3 kids, I wanted to make sure that they can suffer through a real Russian banya. And but actually, it's a question of where you're comfortable with. So, I mean, if you can get the temperature, sometimes people get it up to 180 or 200. And it also depends on what the environment is doing. I mean, if it's humid outside, I mean, in the summer you can't do the same thing as in the winter. I mean, and if you're on the East Coast in New Jersey, then you can't really use a banya in the summer, I imagine, as well as here today in the winter.
Yeah, and Vladimir, one of the things about banya you mentioned about it's a little bit more of a vertical space. The ceiling can be quite high, and because of that, you could have 5, 6 different tiers of benches, and that allows for the different zones, does it not?
Of course, you can choose where you want to sit, and very often the banshchik, after adding moisture and water, will try to distribute the hot air with a sheet or by circling a bed sheet or a large towel in the air.
We had somebody do an Aufguss, the German version of that, which maybe we could do here at some.
Yeah, the towel circulating air helps equalize the temperature. But the beauty of a banya, and the banyas that I've been in, and larger saunas call them more vertical, is you can sit low, you can sit medium, you can sit high, and that can help temper your temperature ranges for your hot room, your sauna, or your banya session.
Absolutely, but also, I mean, if you look at public banya spaces, there are certain banyas that are famous for different things. For example, in Moscow, there is one banya that's famous for the fact that it has different, let's call them ethnic days. So somebody knows ahead of time, well, that on which day of the week, which kind of ethnic group comes to the sauna. To the banya, and what that means is exactly how it will be fired, because each of them will come with their own herbs that they will mix and then use for the banya. So some people may prefer peppermint, others may prefer eucalyptus, or some natural herbs that are being collected by them, and this is something really, really interesting. Another banya has this tradition where before the air is being circulated by a banshchik, people actually lay down on the floor because they know it's going to come down hard and so hot, and it will hit your back.
Yeah.
So everybody lies down before he starts circulating that.
Right on. On that score, when you mentioned about these different nights and different ethnic nights,
yes,
is that the right word?
Traditions, kind of.
Ethnicity within Russia itself, or other countries?
Within Russia, or let's say the traditional people that have been associated with Russia, because of course Moscow has a very large population of people from the Far East and also from the West who come there to work, and each one of these groups brings their own traditions. Right. So you may have Ukrainians that bring one kind of oil with them to add. You may have the Kazakh population that does it a second way, the Tatars who bring a third kind of herb with them for that, and that's of course really neat.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that story up, because if those folks listening to this podcast, Sauna Talk, can look up an episode if you haven't heard it with Bill Trotter, the general manager for Chicago Sweat Lodge. Have you been there in Chicago?
No, not yet.
Yeah. It's I've been told it's very close to the traditional Russian banya. It actually was built by Russians. Okay. This structure, this banya in Chicago, and in speaking with Bill Trotter, the same thing has evolved itself in Chicago at the Chicago Sweat Lodge. But interestingly, the net is cast even wider, where, example, I don't know what night of the week, but a lot of Mexicans have adopted the Chicago Sweat Lodge as part of their routine, and a lot of the Mexicans got into the Chicago Sweat Lodge and the banya experience because trying to make weight, a lot of them are boxers and stuff.
Yeah.
So they've evolved to have their night at Chicago Sweat Lodge. So this kind of fractioning that you're speaking about happens here in the United States as well.
Well, that's fascinating to know. I mean, another thing that I think is so crucial about the Russian banya is in many ways the social and communal aspect, where it's always somehow part of people coming together before the banya and then not only coming in to warm themselves up once or twice, but a good banya can take you 3 hours easily, if not the entire evening.
Generally, how many hot room sessions as part of that 3-4 hour?
About three,
Yeah.
3 as a minimum, with the first one warming up, the second one being much more serious, and the third time is then for the branches. And then another fourth one maybe afterwards. But it also depends on the weather. As today, for example, when the weather is like that, traditionally Russians will either enter a cold pool, they will roll around in the snow, and it's really the most wonderful thing to get the circulation going. It's
No question.
so after that, of course, there's usually a little break, and people will drink some herbal teas and engage in conversation. And
How
just
about a beer?
socialize. Well, theoretically, alcohol is not the best thing during a banya, but certainly afterwards, for disinfection from within and not only from the outside. But I don't think it's followed 100% by everybody all the time.
Right on, right on. Well, you know, it's interesting as folks here in North America get more and more into sauna and banya. It's fun to try to encourage the cool down as much as the heat up. You talk to 9 out of 10 people, and when you say sauna or banya, those that are unfamiliar think of the hot room space. But you and I know there's a lot more to the process.
Absolutely. I think that if you are using the banya right in weather like today, by the time you're done, you can walk outside exactly the same way that you were inside the banya and just walk around for, 5-10 minutes, and the cold won't even affect you because your body still gives off so much heat.
This is like someone talking about a really great pizza. And I can start salivating thinking about biting into that pizza because I don't know about you, Vladimir, but right now what you described sounds really good. Should we press pause and do a cool down?
I think the cold sounds very good right now.
Right
Absolutely.
We'll check right back with you folks. We're Sauna Times, downtown Minneapolis, Hewing Hotel. So we're back. This is Sauna Talk, and we're doing this sauna live and direct, and it's happening downtown in Minneapolis.
Where a whole community is really.
This is JP.
Oh, I'm on mic. I was just saying how wonderful it is to hear from somebody who's not just such an articulate ambassador of the sauna experience, but also ambassador of a culture that's embraced banya or sauna as a society for a way to share connectedness, health, and just general well-being, things that we should be prioritizing as a community and as a society. It's beautiful to hear you paint that picture. Very inspiring. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Vladimir. We did a cool down, and it's interesting. Everyone's got a different cool down style, don't we? And I got this weird thing where when I cool down, I need to jump in a lake or I had to go shower. Because when I cool down, I like cooling down with like water on me, not my sweat. I don't know. And I tell you where that comes from is sauning at our cabin with our we have two young boys. They're grown now. But I would always treat every round as my last because I never know if I would like get called and say, hey, you got to put Nate to bed, or, Grant needs this or that. So I was always on call. So I always thought that was a victory when I could jump in the lake and say, okay, no matter what, I'm clean now. I got a sauna in, and if it's over, I can go up to the cabin and deal with the kids. But if not, I can go do another round. So anyway, that was a condition for me, is to always always do that. But can you relate to that at all, Vladimir?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the cool down period is very important, and as I said, some do it with water, but I think mostly what's important is really a very significant change in temperature. I mean, and the more that can change, the better. But I also like the fact that you mentioned your kids, because in many ways it's sauna is something that's so important for Russians that many have their own small cottages somewhere that they go to on the weekends, where the banya, the sauna, is the most important component. And it's something that families do together. And in fact, when I lived in New York before coming here, we had a sauna outside. And my daughter, my kids would use it, and my daughter, who's now 7, began using the sauna when she was less than 2 years old. In fact, some of her, not the first words, luckily, I think it still was mama, but some of her first words were banya. Yeah. When I would ask her, are you going to the banya? And she would say, banya budu. So it's,
what does budu mean?
Budu, I'll go to the banya.
Oh, I love that. So those little plastic wash things, you fill them with soap and you put it in the sink. They're only like 1 foot by 14 foot, those little square things. You get them at Target, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our youngest, Nate, he would as a newborn, sit in there and splash around. That's how he got into sauna on the floor in the hot room, sitting in one of those dish pans.
Well, I think, when it comes to kids, and especially to relationships between parents and kids, which is always generational, so there has to be conflict, especially during a certain age. And I have to say that even with my kids who are now in their 20s, when we all were younger and they were in their teens and I was a little younger, and even on kind of difficult days between fathers and sons, which sometimes occur, as soon as you go into the sauna and you go through that, it's really a cleansing process. I mean, it drives out toxins, so it's really good for you medically, but it's also good psychologically. Absolutely.
It's like going on a journey together. You're sharing this experience together, and it's a common bond, as if you left your fight behind. You could get in a canoe and go paddle, or you could go into the sauna.
And you're both sitting kind of entirely exposed. Maybe not entirely, but again, nobody's wearing their civvies, nobody is coming in, with a certain job title, or there's no kind of hierarchy. It's a great equalizing experience right away.
Any questions from the sauna gallery here?
Oh, great! Got some water going.
Great, hit the water on the rocks. Please join us. What's your name?
I'm Anne. Hello. So I work with someone, and she's originally from some part of Russia. I don't know where. But if I went back to work on Monday and I asked her if this experience was familiar, do you think 100% it would be familiar, or maybe 50%, or what do you think?
Yeah, this experience down at the Hewing Hotel on the rooftop at the sauna here.
Well, just saunaing in general.
I think that 95%.
Okay.
I would say that it's familiar to her.
Okay.
Not maybe nowadays. Maybe not everyone from the younger generation may go through that, but I can guarantee they've seen how important it is in the lives of their grandparents or their parents. It's really quite central, and in many ways it's able to break down barriers. And I talked about also the psychological aspects. Sometimes in relationships that's so important. And I was remembering earlier, as we were outside cooling down, a very dear friend of mine who he's now deceased a couple of years, but he was an extremely gifted painter. And I tried to convince him. I wanted to approach him so I could work with him on a show and promote his art. But he was pretty much leading the life of a hermit somewhere in the Catskills on a 15-acre compound where...
Is he American or Russian? Or?
No, he was a Finnish Russian from Leningrad who came to the U.S. in 1992 with a lot of his collection, and then Norton Dodge purchased almost all of his paintings, and a lot of them have ended up at Rutgers University at the Zimmerli Museum. And then he stayed in the States and began painting here. but he moved from New York to the Catskills because he really didn't like people. He was a hermit, and he just liked his paintings. He lived to paint. Extremely gifted, but he, as gifted as he was, he had trouble really socializing with people. So he had a compound, as I said, 15 acres. It had 2 studios, one for his wife, one for himself, their house where they lived in, and a banya, a Russian banya that he built next to a pond 30 feet deep that he dug himself. So his day would look the following. He would get up 2 o'clock in the morning, take in a banya, and then begin painting and working all day. So it was very difficult to get him to talk to me until during one of my visits, I was shown the banya and was entirely ecstatic and said, "I didn't know you had a banya. I mean, is there any way that we could use it?" And immediately his eyes lit up, and he actually looked at me and said, "Of course." And I had to go through several rounds of extremely hot banya, experiencing very challenging sessions with the venik and the branches, jumping into a very cold pond several times until he finally began talking to me. And he said to me, "You know, I'm pretty surprised because the guy from San Francisco who's dating my daughter didn't last 20 minutes." And that's when I knew that things would be good. And we became very close friends, and I was able to organize an exhibition of his works, actually here at the museum in Minneapolis, and I own several of his paintings. And he's just an incredible individual because the only place where he would open up to me and talk to me about his artistic process, about what he was doing with his paintings, it was in the banya. It was the only place where I could get him to talk, and it would be the 2 of us, nobody else. And then all of a sudden he would begin to answer questions and offer something himself.
Did the relationship develop such that you could have close conversations outside of the banya, or would he become cool again outside of the banya session?
It greatly improved outside the banya as well, but very often there were other people then. So the only place that seemed to be safe, it was precisely the banya. And I think it's, again, this equalizing and something that's almost sacred. You know, the banya as a safe place, as really a source for, health and detoxification, healing coming together, and that's a very good example how that functions in people's lives as well.
Well said. Well, any other questions? Anybody else? If you do, just raise your hand and come on down. Vladimir, I ask all the guests to Sauna Talk 4 questions, and I'm going to ask those to you. Prior to that, John, do you have a question?
I just wanted to ask about what's going on at the Russian Museum these days and upcoming exhibits. What's happening over at the Russian Museum, because the stuff I've been to there has been phenomenal and want to check out more of it.
Yeah, thanks for that question, JP. Well, we have 3 exhibitions on right now that will be on display through the beginning of March. One on 19th century sacred art, Russian sacred art. Another is the Vladimir School of Painting. And then a really fun for families and kids Matryoshka or nesting doll exhibition. But we're very excited about also what's coming up this year. We have an exhibition in March from our permanent collection that will be called Art in Conflict, juxtaposing kind of state-sponsored socialist realist art from the Soviet Union with underground artists and their nonconformist paintings. And then followed in September by an exhibition coming to us from the Kaladze Art Foundation in New Jersey, which will focus on feminist and nonconformist artists as well. So always interesting exhibitions, but I think some of the events are also able to attract people to what we do. So April is, of course, the month when we always do a very fun vodka tasting at the museum that presents not Russian vodka, but local distilleries get to showcase their product, and local restaurants kind of feeding into the Russian tradition of vodka with what's called zakuska, an appetizer, which is how the Russian tradition of vodka consumption of course works. Always plenty of round tables and concerts, from rock concerts to classical music. So anyone who might be interested to be on our mailing list, please visit our website at tmora.org, and sign up. And for everybody who's present today, as I said, I have free guest passes for all, so come on up and visit.
Sounds wonderful. And I'll put a link to the Russian Museum here in Minneapolis in the show notes to this podcast. So you've traveled quite a bit, Vladimir, around the world,
Well, as I said, I grew up in Germany, so Europe was also always kind of my stomping ground. But mostly my travel, aside from European countries, is of course to Russia, and for over a decade I've been going 4 to 5 times a year, most of the time. So my work still takes me there, and it's really an exciting way to interact with your peers. Especially, it's important, I think, nowadays when we find ourselves in a kind of new McCarthy area where we have to find, the other that has to be demonized, and the Russians are at fault for everything, and we can really ruin a lot of relationships, because immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union, so many relationships have been built between cultural and educational institutions and sports associations, and those really need to be kept up, because it's this, people to people and cultural diplomacy that ultimately is going to have more impact than administrative policies or lack thereof.
Here. And on that score, so if you could sauna with anybody in the world, dead or alive, past or present, who would you choose?
Wow, that's really a tall order. I think that I would probably like to sauna with the person who originally opened up the Sandunovsky banya, the Sanduny banya in Moscow. Just because I owe him a debt of gratitude based on how many times I visited that place. In fact, I used to arrive in Moscow, and getting on the train there to go into the city from the airport would call my brother who works there and ask him when he has time to go and visit some kind of tourist attraction. And the past year, when I'm on the train and I call him from the train, he says to me, what happened to you? You used to call me about the important things in life. Now your first call to me is, when are we going to the banya? Well, it's important.
So what would you like to ask the founder of this banya, and ask it in Russian and then translate it for us? What would be a question?
I would ask him, что вас вдохновило, какие у вас были цели, и довольны ли вы результатом? I would ask him, what inspired you? What were your objectives and goals? And are you satisfied with the result?
Beautiful. Vladimir, if you could have a mobile sauna and bring it anywhere in the world, and have a sauna, what spot comes to mind for you?
My backyard or my driveway to begin with. But I think that question is in many ways answered by probably speaking to you and to JP, because I'm really thrilled at what you guys been doing here. In fact, I felt like a hermit here before I found 612 Sauna Society. I could not believe that Minneapolis did not have something like that. And the first time I went to Como, there was Lake Como Little Box Sauna, then of course Surly Brewery last year, and I think that's the more really fun spaces that can be found like this. And I very much like the intersection of banya with something in addition, whether it's the social, the cultural, or some other aspect. I think this is really wonderful to introduce the sauna culture, but also treat and use the sauna the way that it's really also intended, that it's really part of something much greater, and it works very well integrated into the rest of our lives. It's not something separate.
Beautiful. Knowing sauna and banya as you do, there, for every one of us, there's countless people that have no exposure to sauna or banya. They may know it a little bit from a health club or a hotel. What do you think is is misunderstood about sauna and banya to the average person, would you say?
Well, I think in many ways we are a very prudent society. And very often the misconception might be that there's something going on. Somebody once, when I invited him to the sauna, said, well, I'm not interested in taking showers with other people. So I think that really aspect, that it's detoxification, it's a social aspect. In many ways, therefore, it's even a spiritual aspect. So it's entirely different, and it's also, I think, what's important is just getting the word out. I think in many ways, if those of us who enjoy that approach it from the point of view of development or fundraising, it's the same thing. That you can try yourself to find 100 people to get interested, or you can get 10 people who'll speak to 10 people, 10 of their friends, and can be ambassadors of the role that sauna plays in their lives.
Last question for you, Vladimir, is when you think about your sauna session, your banya session, from when you wake up in the morning and you're going to sauna, you're going to banya, what is your favorite part of the entire process?
The favorite part is really that I know that no matter what's going on, no matter what stress I have or what challenges I face, I know that once I get to the sauna, when I leave, I'm going to feel much better. And it's this cleansing, it's the detoxification, not only physically, but also psychologically. And that's really wonderful. That, I know I'm going to have a long day, or have so many things that will be thrown at me. But, by the time I get there, I know I'll feel much better.
Right, and maybe I didn't that's a great answer. My question was a little different in that, you think about the process itself, the going to banya, the stepping in for round one, the water on the rocks, the cool down after round one, all of these little sequences and processes. Is there one that stands out through the whole process?
Absolutely. I would say it's the branches, the vinyik, and it's the fluctuation of temperatures. Really the big difference. Going from the hot into the cold, it's not so much for me about, how long can I stand outside or sit inside. It's about getting the difference in the temperatures and being able to really experiencing that through my body. I think that and also the vinyik are the most enjoyable.
Nice. So if we were to summarize it, two things: the vinyik experience, and then the extreme, yes. Whether it's the hot of the hot and the cool of the cool.
Really the process between the extremes.
Yeah.
When you go out of the hot into the extreme cool, and back from the extreme cool into the hot. I mean, there's something that happens inside your body that's just so satisfying.
Right on. Vladimir, I want to thank you for joining on Sauna Talk on this. What's the temp outside, folks? We're below zero. We're -1, and we're.
It's like time to go out.
Yeah, and we're enjoying ourselves. We're going to get the steam billowing at the end of this round. And Vladimir, I want to thank you for joining on Sauna Talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys
Sauna talking. Hey. I had to get the computer out. I think we. Yeah, it's holding up. So this is the overtime edition. I want to introduce. We heard from Vladimir, and I want to have a quick chat with JP. And how about you, Sylvia? We want to hear a story from you if you're game.
I'm good.
Would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Sylvia, and just wanted to add that I grew up with banya experience too.
What's your home country, Sylvia?
I grew up in Bulgaria, and my hometown has a banya very similar to what Vladimir was describing. A taller building, public banya, large space for.
About how many people could fit in there comfortably?
Probably at least 30 or 40 or something. How about the banyas in Russia? How many people?
Yeah, 30 to 40.
30 to
Some
40?
are small, but about 40 sounds about right, especially
Yeah,
because
40
of the different
people.
levels.
Different levels.
So the space, is it like twice this big as this room, or three, like in terms of how big of a sauna do you need to fit 30 people in?
So the space where people actually sit would probably be maybe 3 times this size, but the actual sauna is usually much larger because you have, as you walk through the doors into the sauna, that's usually where you have the large stove, and sometimes it's actually kind of, you know, above ground. Whether, I mean, it might be gas driven, and this is where you open the door to throw water on there, and people actually, I mean, go up the steps to enter the space where they sit down, so they are actually sitting where all of the steam goes directly. And I imagine it's the same in Bulgaria, right? It's wonderful.
Yeah, in Turkey too. It's very common in these neck of the woods. Yeah.
So I want to introduce this gentleman. He's been on Sauna Talk, a couple different podcasts. If you listen to the podcast about the 612 Sauna Society Steering Committee, that committee was put together by this gentleman I'm going to introduce you to right here. And I could go on. And speaking about John, especially as it relates to this town, 612, the area code for Minneapolis, Minnesota, what he has done in short order, in a short amount of time, is remarkable about building a community, a real conscious community, and not just people, but infrastructure. We have this kick-ass, authentic, mobile sauna that is being deployed right now at one of the larger, more awesome breweries in town. I could go on and on with John, but I want to introduce John, and I want to have him tell you a little bit about where we're sitting and what this place means. So, your full name?
John Peterson. Thanks, Glenn. And thanks for facilitating this awesome conversation with Vladimir. Vladimir, thank you so much for coming and being a representative of the museum and of a true sauna society, Russian banya culture. Very inspiring and very much what the hewing is a part of here in Minneapolis. The sauna revival, it's been called the Urban Sauna Revival. Many different sauna projects popping up over the last few years from the project that Glenn mentioned, the 612 Sauna Society Cooperative, nation's first sauna co-op, which started right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Glenn built that sauna for us, which is, as Glenn said, right now burning over at Burning Hot. And there's happy people over at Surly Brewing enjoying community-powered sauna experience.
-1 degree Fahrenheit right now, by the way.
-1. Can you believe that's happening right now? A year, 13 months ago, we were freezing our butts off building it, and here it is a year later, and people are enjoying it, and more people are enjoying sauna now than ever
sitting
before.
right now, John?
And yes, and this brings us to the hewing, which built a beautiful rooftop sauna. And this whole thing started. Tim Dixon, who was involved in getting this hewing hotel built, and he came over to the Firehouse, which is a sauna that I built in my backyard a number of years ago. He came over, and we had just a wonderful sauna together. And he had the idea of really making sauna a iconic feature of the Hewing Hotel, it being the great northern tradition of wellness and togetherness and good times that it would just be a wonderful thing to incorporate into their hotel, which is very much about celebrating the local traditions and really, celebrating it in taking it to the next level, which they definitely have here with the rooftop sauna experience.
It's almost the cherry on top.
Literally, and it's a beautiful sauna for the listeners here. This was designed by Michael Gordon and his crew of architects, and they just did a beautiful job with the sauna and the way it incorporates into the different cool down zones. So there's a lot of potential here for this to be really literally the hotspot in Minneapolis for a sauna. So I'm working with them to just kind of help do some programming like tonight to kind of help incorporate this beautiful amenity into the local sauna culture. And it's really awesome that the Hewing really is embracing wanting to not just do something, cool and wonderful for their members, but to kind of connect their membership with what's going on locally with these traditions that, like sauna and their food program. They're really reaching out to the community, bringing the best of what's happening locally and sharing it with their guests. So we're really happy to be here, and we're going to be doing some more programs like this to celebrate what's happening locally and also internationally. We did a Afka session here last time, which is a German steam treatment, and this beautiful sauna is a nice, spacious, big room, is a perfect place for us to share some more treatments like that. And we're going to be doing about 2 programs a month here, so members and guests will be able to come down for that over the next year or so.
So this is a challenge for all of you listening to Sauna Talk, whether you're in Fargo, Chicago, New York, London, anywhere in the world. Minneapolis, Minnesota is quickly becoming a real mecca for the authentic sauna and banya experience. And I'm getting a nod here from Vladimir to the positive. We're making great strides. So my challenge to anybody listening, if you have something that you'd like to contribute as a potential guest speaker, something to the programming that John Peterson is responsible for, reach out to us. Shoot me an email through Sauna Times or John Peterson through the 612 Sauna Society. What's the best way to folks to reach you, John?
This program is under my project called Sauna Society Builders, which is building the infrastructure. We're building saunas and doing programming around town. So best place to reach me is John at saunasocietybuilders.com.
And bring your money. Bring your resources, bring your health and wellness studies. We welcome it all, especially the money, right, John?
Well, sure, but mostly just show up and have a good time. We've been able to do a lot with a little, and now with support like partners like the Hewing, we're able to do a lot more. So, Glenn, thank you for facilitating this conversation, and for you've done a great job highlighting other people tonight, and I just want to highlight you, somebody who's been waving the sauna flag here in Minneapolis long before the rest of us for many decades now. So thanks for keeping the fire stoked, and it's got to be fun to see it really manifesting in all these exciting new programs. No?
Well, listen, yeah, cheers. You know, it what John taught me is it takes a community. I mean, my thing with sauna was like, build it in the backyard, and then I invite whoever I want and whoever gets it, and then I don't have to clean up anybody's towels or listen to their stories if I don't want to hear them. But John's taken this whole thing to a much higher level, and the word that comes to mind is community, involvement, engagement. I mean, it's just this is the great thing for me. I am doing this, with love, and John's doing this out of like a calling and a passion. So I can live it vicariously. I can show up and go home, but you're the guy cleaning up the towels at the end.
We're in it, and we're enjoying it.